Imagine living in a country where the government decides what you study, where you work, what you wear, even your hairstyle. This isn't some dystopian novel, it's the reality for 25 million people in North Korea. It's the place where the state's control is absolute and, terrifyingly personal. Okay, let's dive into this. So, what's the secret to all this control? Well, it boils down to this really chilling concept called guilt by association. Just think about that. This single idea that you can be punished for the supposed crimes of your relatives, even relatives you've never met, is the very foundation of the state's power. It creates a society where trust, even inside your own family, is a dangerous, dangerous thing. To really get what this means, we have to look at the story of one man, Shin Dong-hyuk. Now, he wasn't sent to a political prison camp. He was born in one. His whole family was locked up just because his uncle had managed to escape to South Korea years before. So the state decided his blood was impure, and his life was basically condemned before it even started. Inside the camp, survival was just a brutal zero-sum game. Family bonds, they were systematically destroyed by design. When Shin was just 13 years old, just a kid, he overheard his mother and brother planning to escape. He was young, he was starving, and he was completely indoctrinated. So he did what the camp had taught him to do. He told a guard. He was hoping for a little extra food as a reward. But there was no reward. Instead, Shin was forced to stand at the front of a crowd and watch. He watched as the guards executed his mother by hanging and his brother by firing squad. This is the chilling reality of a system built to completely crush the human spirit. And it's our starting point for understanding life inside North Korea. Now, Shin's story is an extreme example, for sure. But the system that created him extends to every single citizen. The state's whole architecture of control is designed to manage every tiny aspect of daily life, keeping its people, quite literally, in the dark. So just how deep does this control go? I mean, how personal does it really get? Well, let's start with something you probably do every morning without a second thought: your appearance. In North Korea, even how you style your hair is not your choice. The absurdity of it is just astounding. Citizens have to choose from a government-approved list of 15 hairstyles. And no, you can't get Kim Jong-un's signature look. That's reserved for him and him alone. Want to dye your hair? Forget it. It's banned. And who enforces all this? Get this. A real fashion police unit that roams the streets ready to hand out fines or even jail time for bad fashion choices. And it's not just about your hair. Blue jeans, skinny jeans, ripped jeans, all banned. Why? Because the regime sees them as a kind of cultural invasion from the West, a threat to their socialist lifestyle. They're terrified that if people start liking foreign things, they might just stop liking their own country. Of course, this control extends right into the digital world. Trying to get on the internet, or more accurately, the state's tiny censored intranet, is a whole ordeal. First, you have to get permission. Then, a librarian literally sits over your shoulder and watches everything you do. Every 5 minutes, the screen freezes, and that librarian has to scan their fingerprint just to let you continue for your 1-hour session. But the surveillance goes even deeper than that. If you actually have a smartphone, its operating system is designed to take screenshots at random and send them directly to a government agency. Yeah, your personal device is a state-sponsored spy right there in your pocket. All of this control builds into something even more fundamental. In North Korea, it isn't just about rules, it's about your destiny. The state divides the entire population into this rigid caste system that dictates your whole life from the second you're born. It's called Songbun. So what exactly is Songbun? Well, it's a hereditary system. It ranks every single citizen based on the actions and political loyalty of their ancestors. And it determines everything: where you can live, what job you can get, the quality of your education, even who you can marry. It's all broken down into 3 main classes. You've got the core class. These are the loyalists, the elites who get to live privileged lives in the capital, Pyongyang. Then there's the wavering class. These are the regular folks whose loyalty is considered neutral, maybe a little suspect. They face constant monitoring. And finally, there's the hostile class. These are the perceived enemies of the state. They're banished to the countryside, subjected to forced labor, and are the primary folks filling up the political prison camps. And this is where that guilt by association thing becomes an inescapable, lifelong sentence. A political crime that your grandfather committed can torpedo your entire family's songbun status, dooming you, your children, and your grandchildren to a life of hardship. You don't just inherit your family's history, you inherit their punishment. But even in the face of such total, crushing oppression, the human spirit finds a way. When the state completely failed its people, the people, and, especially the women, they began building a new system from the ground up, sparking this quiet, grassroots revolution. So the catalyst for this was the devastating famine back in the 1990s. The state-run food system totally collapsed, and maybe up to 2 million people starved to death. The government just couldn't provide anymore, and its control started to crack. So out of pure necessity, people started creating their own private markets just to survive. What's so remarkable is who led this change. Most men were, and still are, trapped in these useless, state-assigned jobs with worthless salaries. This left married women to become the primary breadwinners, creating and running these black markets. Today, women account for over 70% of a typical North Korean family's income. Just think about that. And the contrast is just stark. The government provides fear and propaganda. But the Jeongmadang, the people's black markets, they provide what people actually need: food, medicine, and something just as dangerous to the regime: information. These markets are the primary way that illegal USB drives loaded with South Korean dramas and foreign news actually get into the country. This whole economic and information revolution is creating these undeniable cracks in the regime's wall. So let's just recap the pillars holding this whole dictatorship up and the forces that are now starting to tear it down. So for over 75 years, the Kim dynasty has held power through a pretty brutal formula: absolute cruelty to create fear, the Songbun system to divide and conquer, pervasive propaganda to create a false reality, and total isolation to keep that reality from ever shattering. But now, new forces are emerging from the inside. The black markets are creating economic freedom and, crucially, new bonds of trust between people. Smuggled foreign media is proving that the government's propaganda is just a lie. And rampant corruption means that for the right price, pretty much any rule can be broken, which just weakens the state's authority at every single level. It's pretty ironic when you think about it. The Kim regime built its power by making it impossible for people to trust each other. But now, through illegal markets and shared secrets, people are learning to trust one another again. And that new trust is the single biggest threat to the old system. The question is, how long can those walls hold?